You mentioned this land value tax a few times of a means to help pay for either a UBI or a Commonwealth fund for business owners or homeowners who view that as sort of a threat on their investment. How would we find the political and individual will to want to be in favor of something like that?
Yeah, great question. So this is an area of active research for me right now. We have a housing crisis in most parts of the world, but Canada, it's the worst. You know, a large portion of society is paying more than a third of their income just to basic needs, basic living, rent and mortgage payments. It's said that you have to save up. You need like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in income to ever save up a down payment to buy a home. Like it's crazy. It's like it's just getting so bad. Like I think we're heading to must be headed towards some kind of crash soon, or some kind of permanent state of despair. Where
And
like
just
people are,
to interject really quick, there's here in the U.S. Recent data shows that something on the order of 60 to 70% of American citizens cannot afford to pay a $500 unexpected expense. I mean,
that's
that's crazy.
that's crazy. And part of the reason is because they're so busy uh, just paying for basic housing needs. Like housing is too expensive. And so a land value tax, what it does is that if you're renting, you're already paying land value tax. You're paying it to your landlord. The landlords, homeowners and landlords are capturing, this has been known since Adam Smith, that the landowning, property owning class captures a greater share of society's productivity. It always ends up leading into the value of rents and the values of homes, which means banks are the ones who are renting homes to you for a long period of time. You know, this is the old feudalist economic system. It's not really capitalist if you think about it. So what we need to do is actually have real capitalism, which is that the value of land and unearned value like that is not privatized, but rather the value of innovation, of work, of your labor, and of companies' innovation is privatized. The land value tax helps to achieve that because it's the single largest asset in any economy. It's the largest expense in anyone's pocketbook. So if you're a renter and you're renting now, after land value tax, it means you actually have more coming to you, but you're not paying out more. You're not paying more in rent because the portion of rent that's land value tax would be taxed by the government. Instead, maybe you'd be paying less income tax, or you would come back to you in some other way, perhaps through UBI or less income tax. Now, if you're a land or homeowner, then paying a land tax may be seen as a problem. In fact, it would reduce the value of land because if you tax something, you reduce its value. But I think the problem we're facing right now is that because we treat homes as as banks, we treat homes as an investment asset. That's why we keep bidding up its value. Like there's no speculation going on. Everyone knows the value always goes up. Which is why we're willing to bid more to buy into a home, which raises the price for future generations and screws everyone else, because we're all expecting to get that money back as increased equity. Well, there's another way. You know, instead of land being your equity, a stock portfolio could be your equity, or a business could be your equity. So, your initial question is, how could we find the political will, especially among the property owning class, to support something like this that would reduce their equity? Well, many people would actually be ahead. For some people, a land value tax, if it was coming out of income taxes or other expenses that they pay, would be tax relief. So on a cash basis, they may be ahead. Not all of them. A lot of people may be behind. But certainly would reduce the value of land and properties. And in fact, some calculations we've done for Canada show that if we had a land value tax that's equivalent to about 4.2% of the value of today's land, that would be effectively capture 3/4 of the rental value of land, or the 3/4 of the land attributable rent a landlord collects or doesn't collect if they just live there. Yeah, that would actually bring down the value of land by up to 75%. Like it's a big steep drop in value of land, and the median home would be worth 42% less due to the value of that land coming down. Now, that's great news for working people who want to buy a house. It's great news for farmers who want to acquire land to run a business. It's great news for property developers because if you have a high land tax, underutilized plots in the downtown cores would be incentivized to sell in order to develop. Because the way land tax works is that if you have a skyscraper and a house occupying the same value of land, the same size of land in the same location, they both pay the same land tax. So obviously that house should really be a skyscraper because that's what society needs in that location. So the land tax would align market incentives so that the market itself functions better to increase supply and to improve the amount to increase construction and make sure we have enough density where is needed. So yeah, but again, find the political will. I think more and more people will never afford a home. They want to afford a home. And I think this is a system that will permanently bring down the cost of housing, make markets work better, reward working people by reducing income taxes, support there. So I think at the end of the day, it's between the needs of people who are working and paying their taxes today versus people who worked yesterday and just have a lot of asset income in their house, who want in good conscience to vote for something that will help their children and grandchildren have better lives. That's what it's going to come down to. And I think if we really link this to the fact that housing is too expensive, I think we could have a movement around it. And yeah, and I see land tax, whether it pays a UBI or not, as a way to establish a better way of sharing the value of the planet, because it effectively means that the value of that land belongs to society, even though the house and the business on top of it is private property, or the rights to the land is private property. And that's a way to share in the value that was, we were born into, that no one created. And that's a better way to get to a Star Trek future, so that we're not hoarding and rivaling and keeping more than we need to be than what we would want to have in order to be productive. What I mean by that is there's no reason Bill Gates should have bought 300,000 hectares of farmland. He's not going to farm it himself. He just bought it to rent it to farmers. So he's just a middleman who's just collecting the economic rents, the unearned income off land ownership. So he's not adding any value. So in a land tax scenario, his business model would be disrupted, and most of those farmers could own their own land, because there'd be no incentive for there to be a middleman. Why would they? They own their own land and they can farm it themselves, and the landlording as a business would disappear. Instead, you would have more ownership, and you'd have property managers, because you still need rental buildings. There's still an incentive to create purpose-built rental apartments, because companies want to maintain and manage those properties and make an income off of that. They make the income off the human-built part, the property, the building itself, not the land part. And that is a much more fair system that would lead to better outcomes for everyone.
And the only reason that Bill Gates is able to do that is because he has the money to do that. He's not known to be an expert farmer or real estate investor, or knowing where the best locations to grow corn, for example. He just has lots of money, which enables him to make decisions like that, which most people in this country do not.
That's right. In fact, the more extreme inequality gets, the higher housing prices will be. Because what's happening is that people in the top 10, 15% of income earners, they have extra money. So what are they going to do? They're going to buy a safe investment that has a guaranteed long-term return. They're going to buy a second or third house and rent it out. But in a land tax scenario, only the ones who are actually good at adding value, like maybe are good at being handymen or handywomen, and want to actually get in the business of providing homes, to do that. Because the asset of simply owning a house would not be as good as stocks and bonds. That would be great. So all these people who have maybe a six-figure job, they could buy stock portfolios instead, and which is actually better for the economy, because they're contributing to capitalizing a long chain of transactions that leads to better capitalization of new companies and existing companies, and that's better for the economy than simply buying extra homes and holding them and renting them to someone else. That is a rivalrous incentive where we're profiting off other people, at least from the land part anyway. The home part, no, that is a legit and needed service. So the more inequality increases, the more higher housing prices get, because people are buying more than they need, And you have, for example, in Canada, some cities, 100% of new condos are being bought by people who don't live there. Instead of by families. So condos being built to the needs of investors who are only thinking about easy rental, as opposed to the needs of families who want to live there. Um, and that's a main issue. Like overall, probably in the U.S. too, but in Canada, I think roughly a third of all housing is owned by people who don't live there. And that would change the land value tax system. I think you have a lot more personal ownership and direct ownership, and that would be a net good for everyone. People deserve to own their own home.
Yeah, most people in the U.S. Do not own homes, so, and I'm sure the same is in Canada. So maybe that's where some, or maybe a lot of political will can be found. If the argument you're making, it sounds like, is we can decrease the price of homes, the price of land, so that it's more accessible for everyone. That seems like a big selling point without even having UBI in the picture. And that's just, at that point, is a cherry on top.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's serious about housing reform first needs to admit that housing prices need to come down. And no one is actually talking about what reforms will achieve that. At best, turbocharging construction, which no one has a really good plan for, would slightly slow down the rate of growth of prices. But a system would actually bring prices down, and reduce people's mortgage debts, and more people could afford to buy homes, and the economy would work better. So first we have to admit prices need to come down, and this is a way that you could do that.
Very interesting. And of course, the same can be applied to businesses as well, right?
Yeah, I mean the plight of the old peasants and serfs are not that different from the plight of small business owners today, who have to rent usually from landlords that have like way more money than they do, and they're just at their mercy. So they can raise the rents, collect more of the profits that small business makes, and small business owners just never really get too far ahead. So in this system, it would be quite fair. Like the small business keeps more of their income, and the part of the rent they're already paying is how they contribute to government, because the portion of the rent that's attributable to land, much of that would be taxed. So that's actually how they give back, and they don't have to worry about so many other income taxes.